Welcome, Stephen Drew to Camino de Camino. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much for helping me again with this and repeating the video. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I want really to enjoy this conversation talking about something so special as such as the Waves and Champs Camino de Santiago. Thank you so much, my dear friend.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's my good pleasure to help you with your podcast. I love this podcast. It has such an aspect to it of the truest spirit of the Camino.
Oh, thank you so much.
So it's my good pleasure.
So Stephen, let's start from the beginning, but not as the beginning as you can imagine. For you, as an American living in America, so far away from being the Camino, how are or what you do? What are the things that you do over there to keep the Camino memoirs alive, to keep the spirit of the Camino alive?
That's a great question. When I was in Spain and walking the Camino, and just to put a timestamp on this, I have done but one pilgrimage trip, and that was on the Frances route in 2016. I walked in spring of 2016, and it's funny how this shifts with pilgrims as we walk across the Camino. There are those early moments, on the Frances route coming out of San Juan and heading through Pamplona and these beautiful places. And we begin to understand that life is very different in that place, very different than what we're used to, especially in the States. Yeah. And in the States, there's just so much distraction from the essential things in life. And on the Camino, it becomes very quickly evident that what life on the Camino is about is, in my case, to wake up in the morning, pray, meditate, stretch the body, load the pack, shoulder the pack, walk, see what happens. It's literally that simple. And that even matters such as food and accommodations, they tend to take care of themselves. And then there's this idyllic, almost starry-eyed period where we're having this initial experience of the Camino, and we begin to ask each other, especially people from across the ocean, how do we take this back to real life? And then even that starts to shift after time, because in very short order, and for me, it really came crystal clear during those introspective walks on the Meseta, which I walked alone, absolutely alone, that this is real life. And what I have back home is just a daily trudge through distraction, So it really becomes the idea of bringing that simplicity, that pilgrim's way into life at home. And I won't say that, this is an American expression having to do with baseball. I can't say I'm batting 1,000. In other words, I'm not perfect at that. But I know that certainly more before I went on the Camino, I do hold that value in my daily life here in the States. And I've come to look at life, capital L, as pilgrimage, capital P. They're really interchangeable for me. So where, I know a lot of folks who have done multiple pilgrimage trips to Spain and to elsewhere. Yeah. For me, I've done that one, but I'm still on pilgrimage in a very real sense. My pilgrimage shifted from walking to reflection, to writing, to publishing a book, to doing the work necessary once one publishes a book to go out and talk about that. And now it's shifting into something else. And maybe it's a transition to another pilgrimage trip. But I've come to really look at it, Guilherme, as one whole pilgrimage. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. It's kind of, if you agree with me, of course, it kind of the way you have trying to pay back to the Camino, what the Camino had given back to you, right?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
no, because uh, this project of mine started kind of like this, because while the pandemic virus was a real thing over here, and we
Right.
are all all in our home, all in our homes, and without the possibility of getting out. In August of 2020, I was able to walk a Camino. Although it's called Winter Camino, I walked in summer in August. But it was a really good experience, different from the others. But after the Camino, I was missing something, and that something was my relationship with the Camino without being there walking physically. That I had being a volunteer uh, at the Alberg on the Portuguese Camino. So I lost that around almost 2 years. I'm getting back there to being a volunteer there. But until last month, I wasn't, because it was closed. So I was missing that. Um, and this project started because of that. Because in a conversation with some Spanish friends by WhatsApp, uh, we spent like 2 or 3 hours speaking about our Camino experiences, about Camino memoirs, and it was a time well spent, and we really relived that Camino. So that's what I thought that I could done it something like that, and that's how it was born. This project, Paso del Camino. That's amazing. Steve, let's go back to your first day of the Camino. So, after you planned your Camino, after you prepared for your Camino, when you arrived and start walking, what was your first big impression?
The first day of the Camino, uh, I'll start actually the day before when I spoke to the young lady at the pilgrim office in San Juan, and she had forewarned me about the weather conditions predicted for the following day. I began walking on Wednesday, 20 April 2016. And she said that the weather promised to be unsettled, which of course it always is on the
Yeah,
Napoleon route. You never know what you're up against there. But it was particularly unsettled for that day. And so when I left San Juan, I left pretty well prepared. I had a pack cover already on. I had a poncho hooked over my waist strap on my pack. I was ready to transition into foul weather, and of course, you know that you've got that quick launch out of San Juan, and then it levels off a little bit, and it was just a lovely walk, and I was so caught up in actually after all this time since I was called. It was 3.5 years between the time I was called to the Camino and actually being here, you know, and here I am, and it's gray, it's looking unsettled, but it's beautiful. It's the Pyrenees Mountains, and I'm watching the cows and the sheep in the meadows, and I hear the cuckoo birds and their mating call. You know, you hear them that time of year, and we don't have cuckoo birds in the States, so it's such a treat to be able to hear them. And so I'm walking along for a couple of kilometers like this, and I'm just having this beautiful experience. And then uh, the path takes a shift, and the incline just sort of launches, and a particularly sharp incline. And at that moment, this wind-driven torrential rain starts. And I just barely get my poncho on. And in my book, I refer to it as walking waist deep in a swimming pool. It feels like that. And from about the 2-kilometer mark, all the way up to that little cafe in Junto, it was like this. And when I got to that cafe, there's an overhang there over the outside seating, and there was about 15 or 20 pilgrims just packed in there trying to get out of the rain. And I was just developing this feeling of hopelessness. And I thought, my God, this is day one. What have I done? Have I fooled myself into thinking that I could actually do this? I've got all this negative stuff going on. And then as I was standing there under the overhang with all those other pilgrims, and I don't even think the cafe was open at that point, but I remember hearing through books I'd read and research I'd done that mantra, just keep walking, no matter what. Just keep walking. And so I did. I said enough of this, and I just, put the hood up on the poncho, and I went out. And after a couple of more kilometers, it eventually laid down a little bit. The winds were terrific that day. So by the time I got to Orizon at the 8-kilometer mark, I was ready for a rest, and I took a good long rest there. I had some food. I got warm and dry, and continued the walk out. And then met a fellow, I guess at about the 12-kilometer mark or so, I met a fellow from Canada who I ended up walking with for a few days. And there was strength in him. We gave each other that strength. The main feature for the rest of the day, weather-wise, was wind. We had some snow, we had some sleet. It was a day that had it all. And then at the end of the day, I found myself at the albergue in the Dutch albergue in Roncesvalles, and I had an experience where, and I wanted to share this with you. Yeah. I think I read this to you the last time we spoke as well, and it was a reflection on the first day, and this was sitting on the bunk, and the red night lights were on, and it was just a beautiful time to sit and reflect about what had just happened. And I came to the conclusion, Guilherme, that I actually had virtually a complete Camino experience on the very first day. I had the carnality of the walk. I had the reflection and the emotional remembrance of mind. I had the ascension of the climb and the ascension of the spirit. So I just want to share this as a reflection of that. Long before I came here, I'd heard of the mysterious energy of the Camino, and though it remains enigmatic, I believe it touched me today. It's like a wispy, ephemeral current, subtle and perfect. It flows towards Santiago de Compostela from everywhere, neither pushing nor pulling. The pilgrim rides along on this current, and it infuses the body when the more carnal energy wanes. It infuses everything, really. It has intention and it has intelligence. It has a thing to tell me. It is expressed in the wind at my back and the wind in my face, in the driving rain and the warmth of the refuge. It lives in the air, in others, and in the inspiring answers to fearful thoughts. It shows itself to me in the peaceful eyes of standing cows and indifferent sheep, in the reassuring songs of cuckoos, and in the holy act of ascension. I am relieved it has not forgotten me, since it called as I walked along a country road in Morris, Connecticut. And that from my book, Into the Thin, a pilgrimage.
We will talk more ahead.
Northern Spain.
But that's amazing, and I can really relate to that. First, because of two reasons. The first one, I had walked last I guess it was my sixth Camino. Okay, but on my first Camino walking, second of all time, but first walking, I made a mistakes, several mistakes. But for you to understand, on the first stage I walked 48 kilometers. On the second stage, another 48, and the third stage I
Wow.
walked 36 kilometers.
Oh my.
So after the first stage, I was completely done with the Camino. I was so tired. I was what I am doing here. I was pain. I had pain from every place in my body, uh, and was really difficult. So after the first stage, I had to calm down a bit. Um, but anyway, I was suffering a lot, and my body was telling me to stop. And the next two stages of the Portuguese Camino were so difficultly, mentally and physically. And almost on the fifth stage, from Pontevedra to Caldas de Reis, um, I've I had added some thoughts of dropping out of catching a bus, not to Santiago, just home. I was so tired, both physically and mentally. But the truth is, I don't know, but something or someone helped me uh, to support the pain and embody the pain and just keep walking. And I arrived. I arrived. And after that Camino, for me to be honest with you, I had no more pain ever. I walked. I am my feet tired but I have nothing like blisters or knee pains, nothing more. Until now, yeah, that's okay. And that was kind of where I felt that on this Camino, on this pilgrimage, on this route of mountain, whatever you want to call it, um, there's something there. There's something special, like the Camino magic. In I like to call them the things of the Camino, because and after that moment, these things are happening to me that are really awkward or magical or miracles, whatever you want to say. For me, they are miracles, but I like to call them the Camino things, you know. And one of them was this year, of course. I had several. This Camino was full of magic moments. But one of them, let me tell you, I don't know. I guess I didn't tell this one to Susan. Um, but so I kind of have this. I really appreciate it to hear the sound of bagpipes, and Galician bagpipes. I really love the sound and the music, and I like to hear that. I don't have, although I live by the border with Galicia, but I don't have much opportunity to hear and to be there to show of bagpipes. So while walking the Primitivo, when I crossed the border from Asturias to Galicia, on the first town where I stepped, I asked to the hospitalero, what, in his opinion, what town or which town it's more possible for me to find someone playing the bagpipes. And he told me about Melide. Yeah, okay. Already on the French. Yeah, okay. So I left that, and next day I had my breakfast, and stupid as I was, I forgot to take out some money from the cash register. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any coins or any notes. I didn't anything. So I walked all that entire stage without a penny. You know, without nothing. So usually on every stage, I make two stops. The first stop, uh, usually I have a small cafe, espresso, and then an Aquarius. Um, and the second stop, I have a beer and something to eat, like they call a pincho or a tap or whatever. But because I had no money, I didn't stop. I stopped, but just on the middle of the mountain, whatever, just to relax and to take a little rest, but not to have any drinks or any food, you know. So for you to understand this, you need to know that usually I have this ritual where I need to, when I stop, when I start in the morning, when I start walking, I have to listen to these two Spanish songs. It's a ritual. So I hear more music, but these two songs as they had to be there. So anyway, in the morning I listen to these songs and then I I left my cell phone on my backpack, start walking again. You know. So almost arriving to the place where I was sleeping at noon, you know. I was arriving at noon. And I was being I have booked the place there. So almost arriving, like I don't know, 1 kilometer to get there, more or less. I have this feeling, this need to listen to this Galician popular song with the bagpipes. So I went to pick up my phone and I started to hear. I start to hear that. And in the moment, like in the middle of the song, in a moment when I was arriving to this place, I start in real life to hear the bagpipes. You know, because was the day, was the feast of that town, of that pueblo, and they are celebrating their feast. So the first moment to open the feast was a big group of young kids playing the bagpipes. So in that moment, I was getting chills everywhere. You know, that was really, really special. And for me, one of the magic moments that happened for me to the Camino. That's for me
That's
was
beautiful. And
really beautiful, you
it
know.
strikes me though that what you experienced there, that's that when everything comes together sort of
Yeah,
as one thing, you know, and I think that's one of the major experiences that I had on my own Camino experience was that idea that all things derive from one thing. And it's when you can actually have that transcendent experience of something like that. Not only does the Camino provide, you
yeah,
know, it provides the means to show you something well beyond anything in the world of appearances.
yeah.
It's remarkable.
That's amazing. For me, it was really remarkable, like you said.
Yeah.
So uh, this could get me the introduction for my next question. So this is an awkward question, not awkward, but you can have several answers. Um, but for me, if you ask me this question that I will ask to you, um, I could tell you several. But so the question is, if you had to walk one stage 1,000 times, which stage you choose?
That's actually a pretty easy question for me.
Yeah. Okay.
I have been focused on this for some time now. And I'm not exactly sure why this is. I think it's just a feeling, but it's the stage between Astorga and arriving at Cruz de Ferro.
Okay.
And I stayed in Rabanal the night before I went to the cross. So, and I had a very significant experience in Rabanal, a couple actually. There's something about that town
Do you
that I
know
just
who is there right now?
Oh, I believe our friend Lee Brennan is
Yeah,
going to be
she
living there.
arrived. She arrived on the 5th of November, I guess.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I hadn't seen much from her on Facebook lately, and I know
No,
she's
because she's just sharing a few, like one post a week or something, you know.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
And
that's
I'll be
wonderful.
meeting her at some point next month.
But that would be the stage that
Yeah,
if I could walk that stage, just spend the rest of my life walking one stage of the Camino, that would probably be it. There was just a warmth to that stage. It was just beautiful, that straight line up. And there's a beautiful little town that's a sort of a detour off Arquivaldo, I believe, that I would take again. Some friends and I some friends of mine run a retreat house there. I can't remember the name of the village, but it's about a 1 kilometer detour off the Camino before Rabanal, and I would want to stop there again as well. But yeah, there was something special about Rabanal, that particular stage, and it was to me the perfect place to pause before going to Cristofero for that experience.
that's
You know,
really
they have
beautiful.
that beautiful pilgrim blessing at the Benedictine church in the evenings there, that they do the chanting, and it's just such a lovely place, just such a lovely place.
For me will be the main stage of the Primitivo. Not because the moments where I lived 2 years ago with my Camino family, but also because of this year. And like you said before, there's these things that all together drive you to this moment. So this year, on the first kilometers of the stage, I I met this Pakistanis guy that lives in London. You know, yeah, you know Pakistanis. That lives in London. Um, and we don't know. We just connect. It was the I just saw him one more day, but it was the day that we walked together. So we walked together that stage. Um, and he was just give me these questions about the Camino. Um, and I didn't know why, but I was trying to give my honest answer, because it was his first Camino, and I was trying to show more or less what the Camino is, or why so many people walk this. You know, I didn't really understand why he was asking me these questions, but I was answering, of course, in my opinion, and we just had such a great time together. Um, and then a few days later, I really understand why. You know, because I found that he's a psychologist. He's a psychologist, and he was trying to understand why the Camino is so good so many people for so many people, and why so many people walk the Camino as a therapy. You know, um, and I don't know. I just realized or understood that I had walked this stage with this guy, trying to give him uh, this approach or what is the Camino. I don't know. But was such a great time this year with Muhammad. Muhammad it was his name. A young guy. He's really nice. So that stage, it's called the Ruta de los Hospitales. Such a beautiful
Hmm.
stage. Although, of course, but the stage is also one of the most beautiful stages that in every Camino that you could walk. Also, um, so Steve, let's into the book. What inspired you to write into the film?
Well, I will tell you that while I was in Spain, while I was on pilgrimage there, I had no intention of writing a book. That was not on my mind at all. I did do a travel blog for people who knew that I was walking there. In the States, it's, at the time anyway, it was kind of a big deal to go and do the Camino. Not everybody can check out a life for 2 months and go walk. So as an extension of, or an expression of gratitude, I did a travel blog, and it was all first person photos. What I saw, I shared, and first person narrative. And it was nothing that I really put a tremendous amount of effort into. It was always dependent on what I could do as far as the Wi-Fi would allow. And but by the time I was done, I had well over 70 entries into it. So when I came home, people who had followed the blog, and there were several who did, were approaching me and saying, "So Steve, have you started the book yet?" And I would say, like, "Well, what book are you referring to?" And they would look at me just incredulously and say, "Well, of course you're going to do a book, right?" And I would say things like, "Well, I don't know what that would look like," And I finally got sick of hearing myself say that, and I thought, well, geez, I'm not going to know what a book looks like unless I actually sit down and start doing something. So that's sort of how the idea of it came about, and I sort of made an agreement with myself to take time daily. And I knew I could write. I knew I had a writing voice. It had been asleep for many, many, many years, but it woke up quite nicely for me. And after a few thousand words, I took a look back over, and I read through, and as objectively as one can be with what one writes, I thought, it really does look like there's something here that's trying to come forth. And basically, that's how it started. I spent about a year and 2 or 3 months writing, and then, of course, revising and so forth. And the publication followed quite swiftly. Normally, to have a book traditionally published is, the odds against that are pretty long. But it found its home, fairly quickly. With just the perfect publisher. I'm published by a press called Homebound Publications, and they specialize in the deep, introspective, contemplative sort of writing, and the book fit in there like a hand in glove. So it's sort of a version, Guilherme, of The Way is Made by Walking, where the will of the spirit meets the work of the flesh, and there somewhere is where the book was born.
That's really amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Stephen, did you ever thought if your Camino could have an expression, what the expression could be? That expression.
I'm sorry, say that again,
So
Guilherme.
if your Camino could have, for people to understand your Camino, if you want to just have to tell them one expression, what expression could express your Camino? An expression, a sentence,
Sure.
a word.
A phrase like, yeah.
Yeah.
When I was walking, I didn't complete. It's a good question because I didn't completely understand it at the time.
Yeah.
But as I was walking, and I think this came to the forefront when I was walking the Meseta. It's a very introspective time, and it was almost like a mantra where I would be walking along, step, 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 and I would say, "I'm walking toward love." And I didn't really know what that meant. I mean, it sounds good, it sounds lovely, but what does that really mean? Walking toward love. And it wasn't until reflecting on the experiences that I had, I think, primarily in Finisterre. I took 9 days in Finisterre, just walking up and down the coast, the ways of the paths along the cliffs of Castro-Mignon and places like that. And that's when I began to have this understanding of this overriding message of oneness, right? So to bring it down to, say, just you and me right now, if I look at you and I see spiritually, I see me, I think they call that love. And that's what the Camino was showing me: oneness and forgiveness of the ways of the world. Yeah. So I think that would be the answer for the question you just asked me. Yeah.
You know, my word is, I have not the next question, but the word, and it is love, of course. You know, the Camino has given me so much love. I don't know. And every time, I just feel so appreciated to being able to be on the Camino. You know, I just appreciate the time, because it changed my life. I owe everything to him. And of course, for those who believe, to St. James, you know, for me is really, really, really important to me. Uh, I cannot see myself without it. I don't know.
No, you are absolutely the epitome of the pilgrim on the Camino de Santiago, my friend. Most definitely. You know, when Lee told me about you at first, I had done her podcast, and she said, "You got to talk to this guy Guillermo," and we both share the same opinion. You're sort of the prototypical pilgrim. You know, that whole attitude of loving kindness and community that you've got going on. You know, I don't mean to, I'm not trying to embarrass you or anything, but you really,
Kind of.
you got to come on your pal.
So Steve, let's talk, before we finish here, let's talk about one of the most important points of the Camino. That is the arrival. What feelings did you experience arriving on the Plaza Obrador, on the cathedral of
Well,
Santiago?
you remember I told you about the horrific weather I had on the first day of the Camino, right? Well, it was pretty close to that on the last day of the Camino as well. And I had a 28-kilometer walk into Santiago, and for the majority of that, it was torrential downpour. So I was tired, I was wet, and for the first time, I had some back pain. It was just kind of a weird feeling walking in. But when you were talking about the bagpipes, oh my God! Whenever I hit the archway,
You know,
I can still get choked up now. And it wasn't so much the relief of it; it was just the beauty of it. And it was a rainy, nasty Galician day. You know, it's you know how that weather can be. And when I got into the Praza, and I turned around and I looked at the western facade, and in 2016, if you recall, it was just covered with scaffolding. They were cleaning the exterior of the building. They were doing restoration work on that surface. So I remember thinking, you know, how, you know, the irony of it, you know, it's a work in progress, as I am as well, you know. And I remember just dropping to a knee and being grateful for safe passage. And I don't think that the entire experience of arriving in Santiago really rounded out until the following day, which was a gorgeous day. I arrived on a Saturday, and I was able to go to Mass on a Sunday. It was a Botafomeiro day, so there was that. And then, of course, you know, hugging the statue and kneeling at the crypt, and so that sort of rounded everything out. But arriving in Santiago, it was a deeply moving experience.
You know, So because of the pandemic virus, I walked the winter Camino Invierno last year, and I arrived on the 10 or 11 of August. Uh, and then I spent almost 11 months, 11 more or less, yeah, more or less 10 months without being able to to be in Santiago. So in the end of May, I had three good friends they were four good friends that were walking the Primitivo, and they will be arriving in the 29th of May. They were arriving in Santiago, so I need to go there, and I was driving. I drove there and just expecting them to arrive. So I arrived like 10 a.m. in the morning, um, and uh, in the moment I arrived uh, in that place, I know I was just crying myself out, literally. I was just so blessed to being able to be there again. And that moment, on the middle of the plaza, there were two persons that I just known one of them. One of these, there were two girls. I just known one of them, and they were there. And suddenly, I just saw the both of them running into me to hug me, you know. And I wasn't expecting that because this girl is from Barcelona. The other girl was by the first time I saw him, but now she's one of my best friends on the Camino, and they were there also to make a surprise to these pilgrims that were arriving. And that my arrival to that moment, just seeing these girls hugging me, that so I don't know. That was one of the most beautiful surprises that the Camino had given me. And then Saint James had given me, of course, you know.
And then
I,
there's that oneness again that you're telling me about. There's that oneness again where you recognize yourself in the other, they recognize themselves in you, and you have that beautiful moment. And you have the emotion of the memory,
yeah,
to relive that. It's, how what a gift. What a gift.
yeah, you know, and these moments are more even harder for me because for me to be able, I don't know if I told you, but I work in a night shift, you know. So
Yes.
every time I just uh, I I finish my work at 6 a.m. and mostly to spend the weekend in Santiago, I need to drive like 2 hours and a half to be there without any sleeping. So
Uh,
every time that I'm going to Santiago, almost every time, I'm just kind of sleepy, and it's
right.
really hard. And even in this sleep deprived, I don't know. Um, and almost every time that I'm going to do that is like that. Uh, I need to get like 10 seconds to assimilate, to embrace what the Camino give me, you know. And
Mm.
I just feel so blessed. I guess that is the right word to trying to explain my feelings, what I feel about the Camino, what I feel about St. James. You know. So Stephen,
Beautiful.
we are finishing here, but before we finish, not a question, but more like a request. So I'm just asking you if you can give a message to the pilgrim, just whatever you want to tell, leave a message to the people that will watch this video, for the pilgrims that will go back walking, for the pilgrims that will start walking for the first time. Whatever you want to say, please.
the first thing that comes to my mind is to listen to our heart. That's where the Camino speaks to us, in our heart, from our heart. And to learn to listen to that is to be called there in the first place, is to get the most out of the experience, to bring in as much within as possible, and let that project out around you, and to hold to the simplicity of pilgrimage. Wake up, pack, shoulder the pack, walk, see what happens. It's that simple, and it's that beautiful. So
Yeah. So Stephen, I have no words to appreciate your help and being here. Thank you so much. And I really,
thank
really
you.
hope to see you walking next year.
Wouldn't
Thank you
that
so
be
much.
lovely?
Have a nice day.
You as well.